What you are about to hear from the House of Commons is deeply important for every Christian. Bill C-9 raises questions about whether quoting scripture or voicing long-held religious beliefs could be interpreted as criminal. As Seventh-day Adventists, we believe that conscience belongs to God, not governments. The Bible teaches that we must obey God rather than men, and prophecy shows that end-time pressures against religious liberty grow, not shrink. I am not claiming that this bill is the fulfillment of Revelation 13, but it absolutely fits the prophetic pattern. Governments beginning to regulate belief, not just behavior, and Ellen White warned that this would come slowly, subtly, and in the name of protecting society. So with this biblical foundation set up, let's listen carefully to what was said in Parliament. What was the tone? What were the assumptions? And what is this direction? What is the direction that this conversation is pointing towards? Afterward, I may very well break it down or just let this whole thing run. So you cannot afford to miss this video. Give me a thumbs up, subscribe to this channel, and share this video so that other fellow Canadians can be warned about the influence being exerted in some political parties against religious belief. Let's go and let's listen to see what went down in Parliament.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It is my great privilege to rise on behalf of the people of Elgin, St. Thomas, London South. I will be sharing my time with my esteemed colleague, the Honourable Member for Brantford, Brant South, Six Nations. We are seeking this motion because we believe it is critical that the Justice Committee gives Bill C-9 the proper scrutiny, given the alarming details we've learned in the last few days that the Liberal government has reached a secret deal with the Bloc Québécois to have a full-out assault on the religious freedoms of Canadians. There was a story in the National Post on the weekend revealing that the Bloc Québécois' desire to remove fundamental safeguards for religious freedom from the criminal code was going to be supported by the Liberals in exchange for Bloc Québécois support on Bill C-9. Now, in the days since this, Conservatives have tried to actually do proper legislative scrutiny on Bill C-9. The Liberals dared to accuse the Conservatives of filibustering and obstructing, but I want to explain two critical things that have just happened. I realize you are now Madam Speaker. You have transformed before my very eyes now, so thank you for that. The interesting thing here is that we had resources to do our committee's work on Tuesday from 3:30 p.m. when the Justice Committee meeting started until midnight. Conservative members were prepared to go line by line, clause by clause through Bill C-9. And then the Liberals adjourned the meeting at 5:30 after we had only agreed on and adopted one clause as a committee. Yesterday in question period, one of my colleagues, who is a Liberal member on the Justice Committee, got up and demanded that we continue our work Thursday. That's today, Madam Speaker. And then this morning, I look at my email and I see that the Liberal committee chair has cancelled today's committee meeting. The clause-by-clause review of Bill C-9, which the Liberal government said Conservatives were obstructing, has been obstructed by the Liberals. Now, I do not ever make the mistake of accusing the Liberals of competence, but they are filibustering themselves. They are obstructing their own agenda. So the Conservatives are ready to do the work. Now, what I suspect may have happened is the Liberal government has been receiving the similar calls and emails to the ones that have been coming into my office from Canadians who are very alarmed by this amendment and in general by what C-9 means for freedom of expression and for religious freedom. They are alarmed by this. I have received calls from members of the Jewish community, the Muslim community, the Christian community, Hindus, Sikhs, all of them saying that they do not trust that their religious freedoms will be preserved if the Liberal government proceeds with this secret deal it has with the Bloc Québécois to remove fundamental religious safeguards from the criminal code. Now, the Liberal government could clear this up very easily. They could come out and say that we are backing away from this. We are no longer proceeding with our plans to take aim at religious freedom. In fact, I would love to hear one of my Liberal colleagues over there say it. In fact, I hear a great deal of chatter from my Liberal colleagues now. If one of them could just get up and say that they will not be proceeding with these assaults on religious expression and freedom of religion that would make this country a better place. But we need to do the proper work as a committee. We need to be able to speak to the Canadians affected by this, the Canadians who are alarmed by this. We need to be able to speak directly to the groups that have been excluded from the C-9 study because of this Liberal government's desire to obstruct and filibuster its own agenda. So the reason I'm rising on this motion is because we need to proceed with a proper study. We need to go into all of these communities in Canada, speak directly to those who are so often excluded from the process. I'm thinking specifically of people in ethnic communities that don't necessarily consume mainstream media and are likely better for it. I'm speaking, of course, of people in remote communities for whom accessing committee proceedings in Ottawa is a great challenge. In doing this, we will be able to have a full accounting of exactly what Pandora's box the Liberal government is unleashing on Canadians with its proposed Bill C-9 and the amendments removing religious safeguards. Now, there are going to be, I suspect, some interventions from my Liberal colleagues who will say, no, we are not talking about, in general, freedom of religion. We're just talking about people that conceal hateful, criminal, violent rhetoric in religious language. Well, I have some news for those members. That is already illegal. There is no protection in the criminal code for people who incite genocide. There is no protection in the criminal code for people who threaten violence. There is no protection in the criminal code for people who incite hatred.
Exactly. Why have this additional stuff? Why have this Bill C-9 when it's already covered in the past legislation? Why? Good points.
Religious defenses in the criminal code only exist for two particular charges: the willful promotion of hatred.
I'm going to interrupt the honourable member. Can we have order while a member is making a speech? There's no conversations going on. The honourable member for Elgin St. Thomas, London South.
Yeah.
Did she really say that?
She said that he shouldn't be here.
Yes,
you did.
I am not going to intervene on this. Order. Can we let the honourable member for Elgin St. Thomas, London South, conclude his speech? The honourable member.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just another example of Liberals trying to silence and censor people they don't agree with. This is exactly why we cannot let what they're trying to sneak in the back door on C-9 pass.
Wow, shots fired, right? Like, this is wild stuff. This is what goes down in our parliament. We gotta pay attention. We have to pay attention.
This is a Liberal government that has taken every opportunity to put religious freedom and freedom of expression in its crosshairs. This is a Liberal government that freezes the bank accounts of its protesters. This is a Liberal government that, under the guise of protecting children, tries to expand the Canadian Human Rights Act to block what Canadian people can say on the internet. So absolutely, I will take no lectures from any member opposite when we are trying to protect the freedoms of Canadians of all faiths. And incidentally, what I will point out to is the fact that we cannot view any of this in isolation. These amendments to Bill C-9 must also be understood alongside the fact that the Liberal government is changing the definition of hate in Bill C-9. And in doing so, as civil liberties experts, as advocates from the political left and the political right have said, they are putting a murky definition that will make it easier to prosecute people for their thoughts and their beliefs, and in particular for their religious expression. And if you want to know where the Liberals think about this, I would refer you to what the former Liberal Justice Committee chair said, which is that religious scriptures, and he mentioned 3 entire books of the Bible and Torah, are hateful at times. And he said that it should be criminal to quote certain scriptures. Wow. Now, we have a pluralistic country. There are people in the House of Commons and people in the Liberal Party that have a range of views. It is possible that the committee chair was out of line and not speaking for the Liberal government. And I will say that I'm very grateful that just a couple of weeks after the member who was chairing the Justice Committee said that people should be criminally prosecuted for quoting scripture, he was removed from his post. The Liberals removed him as the Justice Committee chair. Oh, wait, it was to promote him. He's now the Minister of Canadian Identity. The Minister of Canadian Identity said prosecutors should be able to, I'm going to use his words, quote, press charges, unquote, against people who quote scriptures that he finds offensive, that the Liberal government finds offensive. So this is something where the Liberal government demands Conservatives go along with its agenda. And when we say, all right, let's review line by line exactly what you are trying to do, they cancel the meeting. So we do not know when the Liberal government will decide to get around to this. Perhaps they're dealing with some tumult within their own ranks on how to deal with this. I have had a number of conversations with all members of this House, and I realize there are people representing a variety of faith backgrounds who are members of Parliament for different parties. Perhaps some Liberals who are themselves members of religious communities or represent people who are starting to wonder why the Minister of Justice and the Prime Minister are trying to remove protections to express religious belief from the criminal code, opening faith leaders, individual people of faith to criminal prosecution if their religious beliefs do not conform to the Liberal government's. We need to be able to do real work as legislators. The Justice Committee must be able to do real work on Bill C-9. And if the Liberals could stop obstructing their own agenda and stand by or reject this amendment, but do it publicly and clearly, and they can do it right now. Any member there can get up in questions and comments and say, you know what? We've listened to Canadians. We are backing away from this, and I invite them to do it at this very second, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Deputy House Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think it's important, especially today, given the kind of day that we just had. We just had the Minister of Gender Equality, our colleague from the opposite, the Conservative colleague, and the Bloc Québécois and the NDP and the Greens speak about the importance of the Polytechnic attack that happened on women. And the member opposite called it a feminazi hawks, Madam Speaker. Can the member apologize in this House for saying that?
Order. The Honourable Member for Elgin St. Thomas, London South.
Madam Speaker, when I was young, I said a great many things that I regret and I have paid the price for and I have apologized for. I was proud to stand in this House yesterday and support my colleague from Kamloops, Thompson, Nicola's bill to put strict penalties for people who are victims of intimate partner violence. But when the Liberals engage in this cancel culture game, they're proving why they cannot be trusted to hold the authority to put people away for what they say.
The Honourable Member for Nanaimo Ladysmith. L'Honourable Député de Drummond.
The Honourable Member for Drummond. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have a lot of trouble understanding the Conservatives, the party of law and order, apparently, understanding their position on this. They seem to be really lost on this issue. Madam Speaker, last year when we proposed getting rid of the religious exception, there were Conservative MPs who came to me and said, listen, we're against it because my pastor, he wants to speak out against homosexuality because he's not in agreement with it. That's his interpretation. And I said, he can do that if that's his interpretation of the Bible. But I want to ask the question to my colleague, if his pastor were opposed because of his reading of the Bible to homosexuality, if he were to call on the people in his flock to cut the throats of people who are homosexual, because that's his interpretation of the Bible, would he think that that was a good call? Because it's just that religious exception allows, it protects a call to hate, a call to violence under the pretext of religious speech. Nothing else. It doesn't go against religious freedom and freedom of expression. Does he agree that words like that be protected by that exception in the criminal code?
Honourable Member for Elgin, St. Thomas, London South.
Madam Speaker, that is a disgusting misrepresentation of what people of faith stand up for and do for this country every day. And it is that rhetoric that the Liberal government has decided to hitch its wagon to in pushing forward with this amendment. Violent rhetoric, regardless of whether it's cloaked in religious belief or not, is inexcusable and already illegal, not subject to the religious defense here. When prosecutors do not charge people for inciting violence, that is a lack of political leadership.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Member for Nanaimo Ladysmith.
I want to thank the honourable member for his comments, and I want to say how proud I am to second this motion and of the remarks that he has made this morning. Like my colleague, I have received a number of emails from faith leaders in my riding, and I'd like the member to comment on this. One of the things that unites faith leaders across this country is the fact that their congregations are composed of people of all political stripes. And one of the comments I've received from more than one faith leader in my riding is that the reason that they are contacting me, in many cases for the first time, is because while they would prefer to remain apolitical, this Liberal government, through the amendments to this bill and their support for the amendments to this bill, have politicized their role here and in their congregations. And I'd like my colleague to respond to that. Thank you.
The member for Elgin, St. Thomas, London South.
I thank my colleague from Nanaimo Ladysmith for this question and for all that she has done to champion the fundamental freedoms of all Canadians, certainly those of faith. What's so important here is that this legislation was brought in under the guise of protecting religious communities from hate. That was how the Liberal government sold this legislation. But the most vocal critics of it have been religious individuals and groups themselves who now see the devil, pardon the pun, being in the details, that this will be used to crack down on religious expression. And
that's an important point that he's making. Important. Religious people are seeing problems with this. They're not seeing it as a defense for religious freedom. They're seeing it as an attack from religious people. Religious people see it.
And the point that I will make is that politics has no place governing. Legislators have no place governing what is said at the pulpit, whether we're talking about Christians, Jews, Muslims, or anyone else. So, my goodness, we need to stand up for all people of faith. It is not for us in this chamber to legislate or govern or regulate what Canadians with deeply held religious convictions say.
Yeah. Good points. Good points. What do you think about this? Do you think Andrew and the Conservatives are right? Do you think the Bloc Québécois and the Liberals are right here? And you know what? Maybe it's not about that. Maybe what it's really about is standing up for religious freedom, no matter which side is campaigning for or against. Just plainly standing up for what's right, standing up for truth. You know what? It should be very concerning when religious people are saying that this bill that's supposedly supposed to protect religious people is not and is a part of a concern. That should be a red flag to anyone listening. And so I really hope that you thought this through, that you've listened and you've considered both sides. I want you to realize that there's already legislation that condemns hate speech, that condemns violence against minorities and things like that. That's already there. So why introduce a bill, C-9? Why do that, right? We have to think about these things. I hope that this video has been edifying for you. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and share so that others may be warned about what's going on in Canada. Thank you for watching. God bless.